Karlee and Austin Phippen, thank you so much for coming on the Venue RX today. It's a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. That's a awesome hat you've got there. I didn't say anything before we hopped on, but I'm from Texas and got a couple hats in my closet. So
yeah, it's too hot for. I like my felt hat better, but it's too hot for that here right now.
Yeah, yep. I'm excited to talk to you both about Log River Ranch and just your process for being venue owners here and kind of how you got into the building. Before we get into the actual venue itself, can you take us back and, what were you guys doing professionally, personally, prior to owning and operating the venue?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You want me to start?
Yep.
So I actually studied hospitality management in college at Colorado State in Fort Collins. And I knew I wanted to be a wedding planner or something from the very beginning. And I studied that. And then after college, we moved to Durango, Colorado. And there I worked in a couple different venues, finished up at Purgatory Ski Resort as the wedding planner there. And then we decided to move here after a couple of years in 2019. And so I had been in the business for multiple years before we even decided to open this up. And so that's really my background. It's nothing too crazy or unique. It's pretty straightforward in this industry.
I'll brag on her a little bit because she doesn't like talking about herself too much. But so actually on our very first date that we ever went on when we were both living around Denver, she told me about this property that we're at right now in Chama, New Mexico. I'd always loved Colorado, so I didn't want anything to do with New Mexico. She talked about how beautiful it was up in the mountains, right on the river. You might be able to hear the river in the background. But she told me then that night that her grandfather had this place and it would be the best wedding venue ever, but he would never let it happen because it was his dream place and his dream property. So that was 2015. Fast forward to 2017, we're getting married and we're going to have it here at the ranch. And so they'd always talked about building a big barn just to have a big wood barn, timber frame. And we were like, well, our wedding is a good excuse to do that. So why not? So Karlee's dad's in construction. And whenever we were getting married, I was going to work for him doing construction. And so Karlee's dad and I built the barn in 2017, right before our wedding. We put the last piece of metal up the day before. And then we had a big, huge party. And we don't know how many people told us and her parents after that event that that was the best wedding they'd ever been to anywhere. You guys need to do this. You need to open this place up.
I think you're kind of jumping.
I guess.
But no, that's perfect. This is what this is all about. Honestly, keep going.
Basically this has been her dream since Karlee was probably 8, is to live here and to run this place as a wedding venue. So whenever we actually stop, look back and think on that, it's pretty wild that we're actually doing it. She's one of the weird people that knew what she wanted to do from the time she was 12 and then is actually doing it.
That's so cool. I have a lot of admiration for that. I changed what I want to do probably 30 or 40 times.
That's me.
There you go.
And so Austin in construction before.
Yeah. I was in construction before we did this. I was working with Karlee's dad doing big steel erection and then also building custom homes in Durango, Colorado.
This barn is gorgeous. I mean, it's really we're going to put the links and everything on YouTube for people to see, but it's really, I mean, I'm not there, but just looking at some of these pictures, I'm like, holy cow, you guys did a fantastic job. Karlee, that's super neat though. You have this background that kind of varies. And ironically, I feel like that wedding planner, hospitality background combined with construction is one of the most perfect combinations you can have in this business, because you can do the things that need to be done to keep the property looking really good and kind of up to date. And then Karlee, you're taking care of kind of the hospitality side, you're taking care of the experience. And so that's awesome. That's really cool. Keep the story going. So how did you guys go from this is the best wedding ever. You've got a great time. 2017, right?
Yep, 2017.
2 years later, taking over, doing something that maybe your grandfathers thought never would happen.
Yeah, and so he had actually passed away in 2016 before we got married. And so the ranch became her mother's. And so Chama is only 2 hours from Durango, so it's very close. So we were back and forth all the time. And in 2018, we were in Durango. We had a big, huge fire that year, and we were actually evacuated from our home. And so we spent a lot of time coming over to Chama to get out of the smoke and coming back and forth. And so then the talk started again, seriously, of how can we do this? And at the same time, a friend of one of my groomsmen at our wedding wanted to get married here. And so we were like, well, let's go for it. So we planned to move here in 2019, but then in August of 2018, we did a friend's wedding here, basically just like a trial run. And so then 2019, we officially opened for business, and we added on to the barn. If you're looking at photos, the extension was what we call it, which is like the outside, like where it has the same big infrastructure, but there's no walls around it.
Yeah.
We added that on in 2019, right before we opened up to be fully a business, because we needed the extra room to be able to get to 200. Because the barn wasn't built for weddings. It was built with the possibility of doing that. Like there's definitely space to do it, but that wasn't its intention when it was built.
Mm-hmm. Can you take me back to some of those conversations that you were having about what were you thinking about in terms of the hurdles that you need to overcome to make this into a wedding venue? Like what were some of those things that were like the questions that you were asking yourself at that stage that you felt like were obstacles you'd have to overcome to be able to open a wedding venue?
We knew we were going to have to purchase a lot of stuff. We are very remote here. And so we know that it's kind of difficult for couples to get married here because there's not a lot here.
The nearest rental company, for instance, is 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you needed to rent tables and chairs, or like if your linens don't show up, which happens sometimes for us, you have to drive 2 hours to Durango, or you drive 2 hours to Santa Fe, New Mexico to get stuff, because we're pretty remote. All we really have here is a very small grocery store and hardware store. And then other than that, there's other small towns with an hour, but like a small city is 2.
And so that was definitely the biggest hurdle at the beginning, was what do we need to actually make it work and make it happen and make it desirable for people and easy. That's kind of our goal with this venue, is to make it really easy on our couples, because it's not easy.
Nothing Chama's convenient. Everything here is very difficult, which is also why the construction background helps us. Like Karlee, we lean on Karlee's dad a lot. Like, I mean, he's been doing it for 30 years. And so when stuff breaks here, we have to fix it. We've replaced water line. I mean, since we've been here, the amount of infrastructure we've had to fix, and we do it all just because we're remote and it's difficult.
Yeah, to get vendors in to whatever you're going to need. Okay, that makes sense. You talked about making it easy, and Karlee, with your background in hospitality and working at hotels and some different things, where maybe a lot of that. You said you had background in some hotels. You have done some hotels.
Uh-huh.
So
banquets and
like
hotels.
Events.
Yeah.
Okay. Those places probably were around grocery stores, and they were probably like, easily accessible event support systems, planners, all of the different things that go into making a wedding happen. How have you addressed that, kind of making it more easy? What were the things that you put in place first, second, third to be able to set up ease for your couples getting married there?
The first thing is having all the equipment. So we have all the tables, chairs, linens. We added dishware on in 2020. And we offer a lot of decorations too. And so first and foremost is just having the basics, the necessities here. And then I do offer coordination and planning services, but not everybody does it. But we do also have a great preferred vendor list, a preferred lodging list, try to make it crystal clear and super simple for our clients to know kind of what to do next, get them started on the process, that kind of thing. I feel like the pricing structure was very important to me to make it super clear and straightforward, because I know that so many places make it really difficult to understand what do they offer? What
do you get?
What do you get? What do you not get? And I think that's something that I was really stressing over. I wanted it to be super easy and super clear for everybody, to where I give them a sheet of paper, and of course there's always questions, but they have a good idea of what they're getting, and there's no gray area in it. And so those are kind of the two biggest things I feel like that are really important for us to make this venue work, especially where we are.
I think too, something I don't even think about a lot. If Karlee hadn't had experience in a town like Durango's a huge wedding industry. Like, it's a small town of 30,000 people, but a lot of tourism. And so, I mean, like, they have their own, like, wedding show and stuff for a small town. And so Karlee had worked with a lot of really good vendors there. Because that was what I was always worried about. I'm like, who is going to come here? Like, how are you going to get food? A good photographer, things like that. But because she had worked there, she'd made so many connections that we were able to get good vendors very quickly before they had even been here once. And so now, like, that preferred vendor list, we don't put people on there that haven't been here and want to come here. Everybody on that list we know does a great job, and they've also expressed to us that they want to be on that list and they want to come out here, because most of them come from Durango, Colorado, Albuquerque, or Santa Fe.
Mm. And you want someone who actually loves the property, knows the property, is not like complaining about how far out it is, some of those different things. Before we move on, I'm curious how you purchased the property. Did you purchase it? Was it just in your family? You're kind of leasing it? And then as far as the purchase of, you said some of the rentals go, I know that must have felt like at least a huge financial hurdle to get over. How did you phase it in based on the weddings you were able to get? Like, how did you handle that?
Sure. Well, we'll start with the property. So the property has been in my family since the 70s. My grandfather bought it in the 70s, had this home that's behind us built in the 80s. So it was just inherited by my mom. And so our company, Log River Ranch, leases
the ranch from the family.
Ranch from the family.
That's awesome.
And,
That's so
and we kind of needed to. You can probably tell by looking behind us, there's some giant logs. So, like, there's a pretty heavy financial burden with the ranch of keeping it up and keeping everything nice. And so we kind of needed to turn it into a business to keep it a little bit too. So that was one of the reasons they kind of threw it out there as well, because it was her parents' idea as much as it was hers.
Yeah. So we really needed to figure out a way to keep the property. The maintenance is.
And mountain real estate nowadays that's along the river is pretty unattainable. As far as, like, to buy something and then hope to actually turn a business into it. I mean, to break even, we couldn't even do that if we were to purchase a property like this. Yeah.
And then the purchase of all of the equipment and stuff. We actually have another business in town. We own a motel in Chama. And that was the way that we were able to open this up, because that was our steady income. And so at the beginning, we did have a lot of help and loans from the family, basically, to purchase everything. But then we were easily able to pay them back within that first year, because it definitely paid for itself quickly. So
that's awesome. How did you guys get into, this is a total distraction from the venue side of things, but how did you guys get into, like, the lodging side of things? Like, how did that come into the equation? Was that before the venue? Kind of, it sounds
at the same time. It was at the same time. So we purchased it in 2019. My grandfather had known the owners of that motel, and we actually stayed there. Our bridal party stayed there for our wedding. And they were always joking. They're like, "Oh, are you coming to buy the motel? Are you coming to buy it?" We're like, "Absolutely not. That's not a business we want to be in. We don't know anything about it." And that when we were spending a lot of time here in 2018 because with the fire in Durango, and a couple of bottles of wine later, we said, let's do it. And, they showed us their numbers and what they were asking for the motel, and it was a no-brainer. And that was just because we were trying to figure out, can we still work in Durango and commute here for the first year or two? Can we kind of figure out, we're just trying to figure out how the heck we were going to do it. And
there's not a lot of work. There's really no work here. You can work for the county. You can work for the city, like the village. We're not a town. We're a village in Chama. And so there's not a lot of jobs. And so we were like, so we bought a home and a job together. And then.
Yeah, because we lived on property on site at the motel and ran that.
Okay.
And
that's awesome though. That's like house hacking to the nines, right? Oh,
yep.
Good. All right.
It's funny, when we first moved in there, a guy actually interviewed us in a podcast who was staying at the motel, and that's what I referred to it as, because from the bigger pockets connection.
For bigger pockets, yeah, totally. So and I think that's so cool because you so do you live now at the venue, or are you guys still living at the motel?
Well, we're moving back into the motel in a couple of weeks. We did have a manager in there for a while, but they just resigned. So we'll be moving back into the motel and kind of figuring out how to restructure everything over there, because it's too much for us to do all of it. That's new. So we're figuring it out as of this week. So
yeah, we lived there for the first 3 years. So 19, 20, and 21. Mm-hmm. And in 21, we did 16 weddings, 17. And then for last year, we had 26. And our season's extremely short. She can talk about that in a minute. But we were like, we can't physically do both anymore. And this year we have 32. So we got to figure out how that works. But so we hired a manager at the motel, moved out, bought a house, and to be able to manage both. Because our first year, like, we would sell out the motel with wedding guests every weekend. You do a wedding Saturday night, you're here at the ranch till midnight or 2, and then every room has to be cleaned the next day. And we were lucky if we had 2 housekeepers. And so you get up on Sunday and you clean every room before check-in at 3. And because a lot of the guests are hungover, they don't leave till 11. Yeah. So like on Mondays, we would just be completely, like Sunday night, Monday, we'd just be completely toast.
Yeah. Dang. This is so cool though. You guys are in real estate. You guys are in a number of different things. You're also providing jobs. Cause I mean, I know probably it's difficult finding, good people and putting them into place and things like that. So I understand that struggle as well, but this is super cool. Like how entrepreneurial and diversified, but it's all overlapping, right? Because you have the wedding guests or stay at the motel. So you're solving a lot of problems for people, which is huge.
Very bootstrapped.
Yeah. That's
do what you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. Let's go and kind of keep with our progression of the venue. So when you started running weddings and you got past maybe those first few, what were some of the things you did from a marketing perspective? Like how did you initially grow the bookings that you had at the venue? Was it social media? Were you using ads? Did you invest in a fancy website? Like what were kind of some of the steps that you took to start getting some of those leads in?
I think social media is definitely huge. But also we find our best marketing is word of mouth. There's so many people that come into where they're like, oh, my aunt was here for a wedding and told me we need to call you, or that kind of thing. What helps with our venue is we are kind of one of the only ones in New Mexico that looks like us. And so we definitely stand out in that way. And so I think just the venue itself being new and different really helps. But we advertise through Wedding Wire and The Knot. I find that a lot of people find us there first and then go to our website and contact us that way.
I'm curious about that actually real quick. So Wedding Wire and The Knot, I think it's a mixed bag and as far as like how people feel about them, but doubtless they drive leads, right? Brides and grooms, couples, they're on there. I'm curious for your location, Chama, since you're in Chama, New Mexico. Like you said, you're 2 hours away from Durango, 2 hours away from Santa Fe. You're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, more or less.
A little bit.
Yeah. How does Wedding Wire, like, are people searching for Chama wedding venues, or are they finding you because they're looking for Santa Fe, and then it loops you with Santa Fe or loops you with Durango, and then they're like, this is far out, but wow, this is gorgeous. Like, how are they finding you through?
I think it's that way. It's more of they're looking at Santa Fe or Albuquerque, because we even pop up pretty high even for Albuquerque.
Got it.
And also barn wedding venue. I think a lot of people search barn wedding venue in New Mexico, and they find that. They find us that way.
Our common customer, because we're here, like, when most people think of New Mexico, they think of desert, mountains, but a lot of cactus, desert. And here it's super green. I mean, we're up very high. We're up in the mountains. We're at almost 8,000 feet. We get a lot of snow. And so here is super green. So like I feel like our niche is people that are from New Mexico that have moved to Colorado or want to get married in Colorado. We get a lot of people who love Durango, but they really want to be married in New Mexico because they're New Mexicans. Mm-hmm. And so that's very common for what we see, is they want the mountains, but they want New Mexico.
Got it. And you kind of have that mixture of barn, mountains. You're close enough to Colorado, still in New Mexico. Yeah, that totally makes sense. How far away from the border? I know you're pretty far north, but how close to the border are you?
10 miles.
Oh, wow. So pretty close. And 8,000 feet. That's awesome. So now let's kind of keep the story going. So you have your first couple weddings under your belt. You started to, advertise more. You're on Wedding Wire, the Knot, things like that. At what point, you said you have 34, 32 weddings this year? Mm-hmm. Okay. Where do you want to be in terms of like the amount of weddings you have? Like, what could you see yourself doing with the seasonality and things like that?
It kind of feels like we're almost at our max with 32. So our season is only mid-May to mid-October. And so
we do times of year that we can't guarantee the no snow mid-May and mid-October because it has. Like we have one this year where it snowed 6 inches on that date a couple years ago, October 14th. But so we're pretty tied to those dates of starting and stopping.
And so we have a lot of weekends, obviously, with multiple weddings. And so I could see us getting above 40, but that's a lot. And it's a lot.
And staffing becomes an issue for us at that point because all of our staff have full-time jobs and then they make money on the weekends working for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we don't have strictly staff who this is their full-time job besides the two of us. Mm-hmm. So that would become an issue. And like we've talked about in Chama, nothing's easy. We're so far that like it's an ideal weekend getaway. Like somebody's not coming to a wedding here and then very rarely do they come to a wedding here and drive home. Yeah. They're here and they're spending their whole weekend.
Got it. Yeah, it's an experience. It's an adventure rather than just like going to a wedding that evening and then driving back. Okay, that makes sense.
We're going to find out a lot too this year. October 1st is that weekend. What's that? We have one weekend this year with 3. Okay. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Mm-hmm. And we're really worried that there's not going to be enough hotel rooms in town for guests. Because that's also, even if we didn't have a wedding venue here, every hotel in town would be sold out because of the fall colors. Yeah. So that weekend, we're kind of going to find out if we can even do 3 in a weekend and do it well. Because we can hold up our end, but we're just worried that town itself can't handle that many extra people in town.
Yeah. I'm curious, were there other ways that you looked at how many weddings you were thinking about doing? Like, did price factor into consideration? I know you said there was kind of a financial piece of wanting to make a certain amount to keep the venue running. What other things played into how you thought about the amount of weddings you had and then the price that you wanted to charge?
we're still figuring out how many we want to have. It's kind of this year's we're learning a lot this year because it's our biggest year. And then I keep increasing our pricing.
Because we sold every Saturday the last 2 years.
Yeah. And so I just keep increasing it. And then it's kind of a tough question. We haven't really put a lot of thought into the amount or why we charge what we charge.
It's so hard for you guys though, because it's not like you have 10 comps to like go off of.
Right. And so we just keep increasing because the demand is still there.
But like next year, we've sold more non-Saturdays than we've sold Saturdays so far.
Yeah.
And so we're like, we think we're getting close to our price of where it should be, because
where it can be.
Yeah. Cause we may not sell every Saturday next year.
Yeah.
At this point.
You just try things and see what sticks basically. And I wish I had
it's a lot harder than the motel.
Yeah, I wish I had like a straight answer and a straight path on this is what you need to do to figure out your pricing, but it's just we're working on it.
I mean, our pricing is more than double.
Progress.
It's more than double our first year's. What was
Where did you start?
We started at about 3,000.
Okay. And that's for the whole property for how long? Or was it property? Say again?
No, 12 hours.
Okay.
And that does not include renting the house because we do offer to rent the house. And so that number is pretty big because we do also require a 2-night minimum. And so we're taking away another day that we could sell a wedding.
So it costs renting the cabin costs the minimum of another wedding, basically.
Got it. Because you got to make up for not having the wedding that day. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so we started at, I think it was anywhere between 2,500 and 4,000. So our pricing is it's kind of build your own package. And so like we have our base, which includes the necessities. But then there's a lot of things that people could add on if they chose. And so there's decorations, there's planning or coordinating services, there's the log cabin.
We sell other small packages of like doing iced tea, water, lemonade. We serve alcohol. We require that we serve the alcohol, so we charge an alcohol fee.
But we don't have a liquor license, so we don't sell it.
We can't sell it.
Yeah.
We just serve it, and that's something we learned our first year, that we have to serve alcohol.
Why? Just because it's hard
won't cut off Cousin Eddie.
We required our first year for them to have a licensed server.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be sufficient, but most of the time it's a friend who works at a bar is going to come and be their bartender.
Yeah.
Ready to go home at 10, party ends at midnight.
Yeah, we learned real quick we want to be in control of that. It's too much of a liability.
So then you're supplying the bartender, but you're not actually supplying the alcohol.
Correct.
Yes.
Got it. Understood. So they're bringing it all, and then one of your team members is serving it just so that you have control over, like you said, Cousin Eddie, Cousin Joe getting wild, and you got to say, hey guys, we got to be done now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so our pricing for next year is going to range anywhere from 6,000 up to 20.
Awesome.
Depending on what people choose.
So each wedding is very different.
Mm-hmm.
This year especially, it seemed, because we have so many now, each wedding, different people, like different groups. This year's been very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Diverse.
I'm curious if I was going to get something mid-range, I was going to maybe spend $8,000 to $10,000 at your venue. What are you including? I mean, I know there's so many options, but I'm getting tables and chairs. Am I getting give me some of the things that you provide there with a rental?
Yeah, if you're gonna kind of do a mid range, you're gonna get tables, chairs, linens, dishware, benches for the ceremony site.
Which we include in every package.
Yeah, so that's the base.
That
right
includes
there.
everything in every package.
And then extra things we add on include barware rentals. You'd get iced tea and lemonade, coffee after dinner.
And then decorations.
And then you'd probably get a little bit of decorations too if you're going to go mid.
Most of our weddings do add on those 3 things. And what she didn't include in there too is like in the base package, it also includes our staff. Because we added dishware and stuff, we bus all of that. And so we bus and clean all of that. So we set up a dishwashing station in our shop. And so we have a crew of 3 to 4, 5 people, and we're bussing everything off the tables.
And that was to make it easy on our couples, because so many people hire a caterer, but the caterer doesn't want to do the dishes or doesn't want us everything. And the type and the quality of event we wanted to provide, we discovered quickly we want to provide dishware. It just elevates it. And so with that, our first year we rented out dishware
and asked them
to bus it or make sure that their caterers would bus it, and it never happened.
Which means we did it.
And so I just included it in the price. You're getting dishware plus you're getting our staff, because that's because we added staff after our first year. That's when the price really jumped up.
It sounds like what you've done is each year when you have done those pricing increases, you also added value in. So people were getting more, even though they were paying a little bit more, the value of what they were doing for the price increase far outweighed. Because if you're setting up the wedding at your venue, it's like if I was coming from California I actually went to Colorado State, but I did the online program my senior year because I had started the business and moved to California. Anyway, long story, but you said that was kind of cool. But yeah, like coming from California, like I want to know that you have everything all kind of figured out for me, like how I'm going to get married there. So that makes a lot of sense, and people are willing to pay for that. Totally.
Yeah.
So as far as we talked through a little bit of marketing, Instagram, some wedding directory stuff. In terms of some of your back end software, things like that, are you using a CRM system? Are you using any softwares like a seating chart or layout or anything like that help you execute the weddings?
Yes. So we use Honeybook.
Okay.
And then
started with 17 hats.
We started with 17 hats, and 17 hats was really good for the price. The price was very affordable. But we expanded our team to where I have somebody helping me do all the intakes, like the initial inquiries.
And that's because of the Wedding Wire Knot, basically. Like, you get so many poor leads from there that you just want somebody to answer it. Just say, great, thanks for looking, send them pricing. Because they haven't even looked. They just sent, I would like info. And they're not like qualified leads. So we try to now, Karlee doesn't deal with somebody until it's a qualified lead.
And so because we added somebody helping me with that, we needed to upgrade our software. So that's why we upgraded to Honeybook. And I love the payment process through there is super easy, and it's all the contracts, and they have a bunch of documents that are helping me stay organized. So I do like a pre-wedding questionnaire. I have
which has been a big deal.
It's been a big deal. What else is on?
Just to kind of streamline it, why has it been a big deal for you guys?
Because we're so far out. Like we include so many things. People just sometimes don't pay attention, or they don't read everything. Like, it's a pretty big contract and everything that we include and we're going to do. And so that questionnaire really cuts. Like, if she's not coordinating, especially, it really helps with our communication with the client, because if she doesn't coordinate, we've never had another coordinator or planner here. So if they don't hire Karlee, they don't hire anyone.
They're welcome to. It just hasn't happened.
Because she discounts it pretty heavy. Like, she used to do our first couple of years, she did coordination off the ranch because we weren't busy. Yeah. But we quit because we're so busy here now, and she offers it at a pretty great discount because it's here and there's no travel. It's easy. We know what makes a good wedding here, and we want her to coordinate it. So we'd really encourage people to pay that extra bit.
Yeah. That makes sense, because the property. Someone doesn't have to come in and learn the property. You're basically teaching them how to take care of the things you already know how to do. That makes sense. I'm curious. This is something I don't normally ask, but on this weekend coming up here, it's Thursday. Do you guys have a wedding?
We have one on Friday and Saturday.
Friday and Saturday. Are they also staying in the motel?
One of the groups is, yes.
One group's semi-local.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nice. So when you're preparing for a double header like that, what does your team look like? Like, what are you? It's Thursday. Are you starting to get the property ready? Do you have employees that are doing different things? Like, kind of what is your team and your support group look like heading into a wedding weekend?
I'll start.
Sure. He was just working.
I was just working on it. So we just got done setting all our benches here. They're set up right next to us right now by the river. So like I have a young high school kid come help me on. The school's usually out on Friday, so that works out even when they go back to school. And so today's Thursday, but usually on a Friday we set up the benches for the next day. We sweep the barn and set up all the tables and chairs. And then we prep all the dishware, have everything pre-washed, put all that in the barn and cover it with a linen because it is a barn. Critters come in every night. And then we also, if like she's doing decorations or anything like that, we'll have everything in there and ready. So tomorrow morning when she shows up, it's ready to go for her. So like I come here with one other person in preset, and last year and this year a little bit, like we've trained somebody well enough where they can do it pretty well on their own on the most part, which is big for us because usually we're also prepping the motel or the house or vacation rentals as well for the weekend. So that's like I do most of the pre. She does all the paperwork. She gives me that questionnaire that I was saying is huge. Yeah. And then she also gives me a layout. She does use a software for the layout of the barn. It's like a blueprint. And so we use that to work off of from her. And then she kind of I'm just basically operations. We joke that I'm just a ranch hand here. That's Dad and I are just ranch hands.
In the past, I've always helped too with the initial setup, but we have two little girls, and so we have a 3-year-old and a 8-month-old. So
congratulations, guys, that's cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And so I do a little less of the labor, the actual pre-wedding stuff, but then I'm here all day for a wedding, and then
I am too.
He's here too when we have childcare. When we don't have childcare, one of us
leaves at like 8.
Yeah.
Cool. Our kids, like this summer, our kids are there in the morning with us.
So,
we have a pack and play set up in the barn, and then our 3-year-olds running around helping. So it's a family affair, and a lot of times Karlee's parents are here in the house. They live here, and so if they're here, they'll watch our kids a lot. But they work too, so sometimes they're not able.
Very cool. Yeah, it's I think this industry is very much a family affair. I talked to so many couples. My wife and I have 5 kids, and she's pregnant with our 6th, and he's got, thank you. And we're not Mormon or anything. We just it comes to a family of 8. So
have a good, strong marriage. That's what that means.
There you go. Amen. Yeah, we our 10-year-old and our 7-year-old, they've been out pretty much at all of our properties helping set up and tear down events. They've pulled up chairs. We did a big purchase of a bunch of chairs for one of the venues, and they were cutting down the boxes and turned the boxes into a fort, of course, after, made a huge mess. But it was kind of that, just being a part of it. So
it is. And you saying that is one of the reasons we moved to Chama. We love Durango. Like, it's where Karlee went to high school. It was a dream of mine to live there. It's a beautiful town, but we wanted to be after spending time in Chama, it's a different lifestyle. We're extremely busy, so I can't say it's a slow lifestyle, but it still is a slower pace. We were before we opened this, we'd analyzed, and we're she worked weekends doing weddings at a ski resort, and then I work all week doing construction. It's we're going to pass 2 ships in the night. You're going to work weekends and I'm going to work weekdays. And so we kind of that was one of the reasons we moved and opened it up, is because that's what we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're
Girls.
yeah, you're investing into your property. It's something that you're building and you're working on that's your own. And it also allows you the flexibility to have your family right there with you, which is huge. That's really neat. That whole kid thing totally took me on a side tangent. So
sorry.
I'm curious. I want to ask two different questions. Usually at the end of the episode, we ask like, what's your favorite? What's your least favorite part? I want to do something a little different in the middle of this one and ask you about any wedding disasters that you've had in the last couple years of operating. Were there any weddings that stood out to you that was like, oh my goodness, we are not doing that again?
I can't think of anything that we we did wrong, or we would like.
No. And it's not as much,
It's not like it.
not how you guys messed up.
No.
The event,
I mean,
Well, we still messed up by not being in control of certain things.
Yeah. So there's one wedding in particular where
I'm curious of which one you're thinking.
the couple had way too much to drink, and we had served them a total of 2 beverages, and so they were drinking and
all day.
I don't know where if they were smoking weed or doing something else too, because at the end of the night
They couldn't even talk.
they were sideways, they'd yell at each other, swearing. And our biggest issue right now is alcohol.
All of our issues stem to alcohol.
It's people showing up drunk already. It's people drinking in their cars, because we're a ranch. Everybody thinks they can just tailgate out of the back of their truck.
When you go to a party at a ranch, that's what you do. You bring your cooler, it's in your pickup, and you don't want to be a burden to somebody else who's having the party, so you bring your own.
Yeah.
And it's also because we're a ranch, we're a big property, and so the parking is a decent little ways from the barn. And so to be able to manage that is extremely difficult. You're either a complete jerk because you just hound everybody when they walk to their car, or you're just like trying to spy on everybody while you're working.
Yeah. And so that's our biggest, any sort of disaster that happens at a wedding, it's because of, it's alcohol induced. I don't know. It's, it stems from that.
The one I think of is our first year. We had a wedding here, and this is before this wedding is the reason we started serving alcohol. They had a friend, and she left at like 9:30, and last call was at 11:30, I think. So we're like, are we less liable if we're just letting people raid the bar, or if we're serving without a license? Like what? Like we're trying to figure that out as this is all happening, trying to manage the alcohol. And that was a mess. That was why we started serving alcohol.
They stole our wedding sign up front.
They're staying at
and they were staying at the motel. And so Austin happened to be there because he's like, they're going to be a mess when they get to the hotel. So he rushed back, and they pull up with the sign in the back of their truck, swinging it around. And
they were up till 3 a.m.
Yeah.
They had rented all but one room at the motel, which is also not a good idea. So one couple didn't sleep. I stayed up till like 3, 4 a.m. trying to keep people quiet. And so we had to give money back the next day to somebody who didn't sleep. And that wedding is a mess.
So, it's interesting as I'm thinking about your dynamics specifically. You're not only handling, because a lot of venues, right? They do the wedding and then they send the folks off, but you're literally sending them off to another place of yours in a lot of cases. So if they're
rentals too now for other owners in the valley.
Okay.
And so most of our weddings rent those as well. And so like, I deal with that. So they'll call me asking questions about the wedding, and I'm like, you need to talk to Karlee. Or they'll call Karlee for questions about the house they're staying at. She's like, you have to call Austin. So we deal with people like with their whole weekend is kind of in our hands, which is a little nerve-wracking sometimes.
Probably if you think about it individually, like piecemeal at a time, it's a little less nerve-wracking than if you're like, this whole thing, depending on how we manage it. Yeah.
And that's why we definitely separate the businesses in that way, where I am the main contact for here. He's the main contact for the vacation rentals. And when we had the managers at the motel, they were in charge of the motel, not us.
Don't call us, don't ask. We're not confusing the two.
So, but we always, of course, just work together to try to bring it all together. And
a lot of those things, like with all these problems, is when we have upped price and added things. So like we just drove home our biggest addition for this year and next year. We bought a 14 passenger van to drive people to their hotels and lodging in town, because that's our biggest fear is someone leaves here and hits somebody drunk or themselves. And so to cover our butts.
Mm-hmm. So the shuttle was our latest addition that we felt was necessary.
So we just added it into we upped the alcohol fee for next year. And we're not making money on that up, but we're just trying to cover our costs essentially with the van. But we are really happy with that one, because like every year something small happens and we're like, all right, we need to do this. And
it's neat though, because again, you're solving more problems for people. And I think ultimately it'll lead to maybe more bookings, because it's like they had this really cool transportation option. Like we were totally fine to pay the extra fee because we didn't have to think about driving down.
That's why we bought the van, was because of disaster wedding. Mm-hmm. Somebody had rented a van for the bridal party. Dad was supposed to drive the van, and Dad couldn't talk at leaving time. And so I just walked up to him and I'm like, I think you should give me the keys. And he's like, I think that's a good idea. I was like, yeah, you're not driving 14 people home right now. Mm. And so I think we bought the van like within a month.
Yeah.
After that happened, we were like, that would solve the problem. And we know we're going to have a sober driver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. I'm curious with all of the different experiences you've had so far, with how you've grown, where do you guys see yourself in 3 to 5 years, as far as like how you're growing your business, the different businesses you might have? Like, where do you see yourselves?
Hope we don't give 2 different answers, because but this is like what we've been talking about lately, because we're kind of unsure. It's like
we are very much forward thinkers. Like we try to keep the future in mind and try to make our decisions based on that. And this last year has kind of thrown us for a loop a little bit. So it's a little different than it was.
Well, anyway, I feel like we've actually kind of reached our 3 to 5 year plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you would have asked us 3 years ago, like, we've reached it now.
Mm-hmm.
Until our managers quit the other day at the motel. But like we've kind of gotten there, and now we're trying to figure out, because we thought everything here would take so much longer to build. Like, we bought the motel as a job.
Because we figured it would take 5 years to get this thing up and running properly to its potential, and it took two because of COVID.
Because of COVID, New Mexico was totally shut down. We didn't have a single wedding in 2020. Mm-hmm. So that's where we were very fortunate with the motel, is we didn't really even pull money from the ranch for us until late last year. So we've always just poured everything back. Mm-hmm. And we kind of are at now our 3 to 5 year plan. And we don't really know at this point, like what.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how next year goes. The industry changes so quickly, and trends come and go. We had, obviously, as most people did, a huge 2021, 2022 boom with COVID. And this year even. And then next year it's looking slower. And so I see us doing about what we're doing right now. And our goal is always to add one thing a year. One upgrade a year is kind of our goal. And so we have a couple of things that we're planning. And so I'm happy with where we are right now, that if we do more, great. If we do less, great.
And like kind of like we've explained, like we have a very diverse portfolio, being in Chama, like with managing vacation rentals, owning a hotel. We used to do construction when we first moved here for other people, especially in 2020 when like the hospitality industry was closed. We did some remodels. We totally quit that because we can't even do our own construction work anymore. But with that diverse portfolio, we're kind of trying to just pay everything off right now that we owe on other businesses to where we can say no here at the wedding venue. We love summer, and that's like, we don't enjoy summer ever. And so we're trying to get to a point where we have little kids now and where we can take them out in the summer. And like, I think our goals are more like, we'd love to do 30 weddings, but we'd also love to like say no to a weekend.
To 2 weekends or something like that. Right now we're taking everything we can get. But my goal is to have the ability to be choosy and limit.
So we can raise our kids. It's the whole reason we moved here, for the ranch and for our kiddos. And so trying to
future kiddos at that point.
Yeah, future kiddos at that point. But like this last week, we left for 3 days to camp in our camper. And that's the longest we've ever left together
in the summer
over the last 5 summers. She might leave or I might leave, but we've never left together. Yeah. So it was a big deal for us. And to get to that more is what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, that's so cool. You're sharing this, and I'm even thinking about my own entrepreneurial journey. And I think maybe a lot of people can relate, who are listening or watching. You kind of, you set your 3 to 5 year goal, and then you get there. And I remember you saying at the beginning of the show, kind of like, this is so cool to see where we're at right now, because this is what we dreamed about doing a couple years back. And that was kind of, for us, we in COVID, after we had our staffing company, we pivoted into venue management, and we thought it was going to take a pretty long time to get more venues. Like, we had one, and then we had a second one, but then really quick, we had 3, 4, 5. It was, now all of a sudden there was different problems. There were managing people problems, and they were like, you're so busy. So then how do you juggle? And then if you hire someone, now you're just managing people. It's different than actually doing the thing.
Yep. And we don't really want, like, here specifically at, like you saying that, here specifically at the ranch, that's something we know we don't want.
Yeah.
Like, it's a family property. This place is absolutely beautiful. Like, we don't want to turn over the wedding venue to a staff.
Yeah.
This is why we moved here. This is what we want to do. So we want to be here for events. Like, that's why I put a manager at Motel and not here. Because we want to spend as much time here at the ranch as we can.
Yeah. That's cool. So maybe that makes more sense for you guys, like you were saying, to do other things, still have your 20 weddings or something a year, but kind of pull your weddings back so that you're making sure that you're giving an incredible experience, but then you're still able to enjoy it. So you're not just running like crazy.
That's what it's been the last few years, because nobody that works for us does a job that we have not done.
Yeah.
Whether it's at the motel or here, we do everything. I bus during the events. I'm doing everything, washing dishes. I've parked cars. It's like, we do it all here, but we're happy to do it here because we get to be here, not in the city.
Yeah. That's cool. Guys, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. It's been really cool hearing about your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, you guys are very diversified. You're doing a bunch of different things. I love your venue, just the beauty of it, your obvious passion for what you're doing. And it's inspiring to see. So I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go kind of learn more about the property, maybe they're interested in even coming and doing a wedding there, coming out and visiting you guys, or even just knowing more about the two of you and the property, where's the best place to get a hold of you?
I would send them first to the website, logriverranch.com. From there, all our contact info is there, or even Instagram, which is at Log River Ranch. And there you see everything that we're doing. We try to,
because we link to it. We want our business here to create business for the other businesses. So like, we have an accommodations page on the ranch's website to send them to the other two.
That's definitely the best way to get a hold of us is either through the website or on Instagram.
or come visit now that it's hot everywhere. We're talking about it being hot. It's like 85.
Yeah, well, 85 is nice compared to, we've got venues in different places, and yeah, it's like, it's insane. Ramona is our maybe furthest out in the country one, and it'll get 90, 100, you know. Fortunately, it's a little higher elevation, but yeah. Anywho, Karlee, Austin, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the Venue RX.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us.